Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Welcome to the Science of Hockey, where we dissect the data behind the game. I'm your host, the analyst. In this episode, we uncover how muscle physiology drives elite ice hockey performance, from skating endurance to high-intensity bursts. Get ready for a deep dive into the science of speed and power on ice.
Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always ready to get into the science.
Today we're going all the way down to the cellular level, looking at how muscle proteins could be giving hockey players an edge.
Oh, this is cool stuff. We're talking about research on elite under-20 Danish national team players, both forwards and defensemen.
Real deal athletes.
Exactly. And what makes this research so interesting is that's not just some lab experiment. These guys were playing real games with all that intensity you see in pro hockey.
So real-world application.
Totally. They took muscle biopsies from the players before the game to analyze key proteins, then correlated those findings with actual on-ice performance.
We're talking about what's happening in the muscles of top-tier players as they battle it out.
Precisely. They were looking at proteins involved in muscle contractions and how muscles handle acid buildup from intense exercise, both crucial for hockey.
Absolutely. You've got bursts of speed, rapid changes in direction, constant physical contact. Those muscles are working overtime.
No doubt about it. Now, they tracked a ton of data during these games. Total distance skated, speed, accelerations, decelerations, the whole 9 yards. And they found that forwards skated a shorter total distance.
Not a huge surprise, right? Defensemen are covering the whole ice surface back and forth.
Makes sense. Forwards are more about those explosive bursts towards the net. But get this, despite that difference in overall distance, there was no significant difference in the levels of those muscle proteins between forwards and defensemen.
Wait, so even though forwards are known for those quick sprints and bursts of energy, their muscle protein levels weren't higher?
It seems counterintuitive, right? You'd think the different playing styles would lead to different muscle protein profiles.
So it's not just the raw levels of these proteins. What else is going on?
Well, that's the big question. But they did find some key connections. Two proteins, NACASU and KTP, were consistently linked to both total distance skated and high-intensity distance.
So these proteins are important for endurance no matter what position you play.
Seems like it. They're connected to both sustained effort and those explosive bursts, which is pretty impressive.
Definitely. So these proteins help those muscles function under all sorts of conditions. What about aerobic fitness? Did they find that it mattered?
Oh yeah, aerobic capacity plays a big role, it seems. Forwards who had higher citrate synthase activity, basically a measure of how well muscles use oxygen. They covered more total distance on the ice.
So the guys who could process oxygen more efficiently were skating further.
Makes sense? And they backed that up with an off-ice endurance test called the Yo-Yo IR1 ITKH.
Specific for hockey players, I assume.
You got it. And guess what? Strong correlation between performance on that test and total distance covered in the game.
So even in a fast-paced sport like hockey, having that aerobic fitness gives players an advantage.
It seems that way. Shows the importance of a well-rounded training program, even for these explosive athletes.
Yeah.
But what about those explosive sprints? Did they find anything about the proteins related to that kind of power?
This is where things get really interesting. They looked at type IIA muscle fibers.
The ones known for those quick, powerful contractions.
Yeah, exactly, the fast twitch fibers. I was sure we'd see a connection to sprint performance.
You'd think, right?
But get this, the amount of type IIA fibers wasn't related to how well players did in sprints.
It's a bit of a curveball.
Total shocker. The muscle fibers known for fast twitch actions didn't predict the fastest skaters. So, what else is going on? What else could be influencing those explosive sprints?
That's what everyone's trying to figure out. It's likely a whole bunch of factors working together.
Like what?
Well, think about it. Technique plays a huge role in how efficiently you transfer power to the ice.
Makes sense.
And then you've got skill. Things like anticipation and timing, that can give a player an extra split-second advantage.
Right, those subtle differences.
Even equipment could come into play. A lighter skate could make a difference.
So many variables. It's not just about the muscles themselves.
Exactly. It's a reminder that athletic performance is this complex system with so many factors interacting.
Fascinating. What about those other proteins we talked about? The ones that help muscles deal with lactate and that burning sensation. Any findings there?
Yeah, some interesting stuff. They looked at proteins like MCT4 and NHE1.
Those are involved in transporting lactate and regulating acidity in the muscle cells, right?
You got it. Basically, they help your muscles deal with the byproducts of intense exercise, help clear out that lactic acid buildup.
Keep those muscles firing properly.
Exactly. But the findings for these proteins were a bit less consistent across positions, especially compared to those endurance proteins we talked about earlier.
So more research needed there.
Definitely. They also looked at those rapid accelerations and decelerations, those constant changes of pace you see in hockey.
Trying to find a link between those movements and muscle protein levels.
Right, but they didn't find any strong connections there.
So those quick bursts and sudden stops might be more about other factors.
It seems that way. Again, things like technique, skill, and equipment might be more important for those movements than those specific muscle proteins.
So to recap, we've got NACI2 and KTP as the stars for endurance and high-intensity skating.
Regardless of position.
And aerobic capacity also seems to give players an edge in terms of covering the ice.
Definitely key factors.
And then we have that surprising finding about type IIA muscle fibers not being the sprint predictors we thought they were.
That one threw us for a loop.
It really highlights how complex athletic performance is and how much we still don't know.
Absolutely. And remember, this study focused on some of the best young players in the world. But what about those of us who aren't playing at that level? Do these findings apply to recreational athletes?
Right, like if I'm just hitting the ice for a casual game with friends, should I be worried about my NACI2 and KTP levels?
Maybe not to the same extent as a pro, but I think the takeaways here are valuable for anyone who wants to improve their fitness and performance.
So what can we learn from these elite athletes? Give us the golden nuggets of wisdom.
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of building a solid aerobic base. Even in a sport like hockey, with all the starts and stops, good cardiovascular fitness can make a huge difference.
So don't skip those cardio sessions.
Exactly. This study also reinforces the idea that training should be individualized. Everyone's different, and what works for one athlete might not work for another.
You got to listen to your body.
Exactly. Pay attention to how your body responds to different types of training. That's how you optimize your performance.
Makes sense. So aerobic fitness, individualized training, anything else we should focus on?
Can't forget about recovery. These athletes are pushing their bodies to the max. So proper recovery is essential for letting those muscles repair and rebuild.
Rest is just as important as the workout itself.
Absolutely. And it's not just about muscle recovery. It's about restoring balance in those cellular processes we've been talking about.
Give those proteins time to replenish.
Right. The researchers also looked at how the players' muscles were handling all that intense effort. They found that lactate levels, which is a byproduct of anaerobic metabolism, increased a lot during the game. And at the same time, muscle pH decreased, meaning the muscles were becoming more acidic.
So basically the muscles were working really hard and getting tired.
Exactly. It illustrates the metabolic stress that comes with high-intensity exercise. And it highlights the importance of those muscle proteins that help regulate ion balance and acidity. They're working overtime to keep those muscles going.
It's incredible how resilient the human body is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a testament to how adaptable our bodies are. And think about it. This study focused on highly trained athletes. Imagine the potential for improvement in less experienced players.
If this knowledge can help elite players, imagine the impact it could have on developing athletes.
Oh, absolutely. If we can understand how those cellular processes contribute to performance and fatigue, we can create training programs that are more effective, safer for athletes of all levels.
It's like we're entering a whole new era of training. We're not just looking at sets and reps anymore. We're getting down to the cellular level.
It really is. And think about it. We might be able to personalize training programs based on an athlete's unique muscle profile.
So instead of one size fits all, you could have programs tailored to specific proteins to enhance what gives each athlete their edge.
Exactly. It's like a fingerprint for athletic potential. We could move beyond general training principles and get down to the individual factors that truly drive performance. It's not just about pushing harder. It's about working smarter, understanding what's happening within the muscles.
It makes you wonder about those proteins we talked about, NACA2 and KATP. If they're so crucial for endurance and high-intensity performance, could we find ways to boost them through training?
Well, some research suggests that certain types of training might influence muscle protein expression, particularly high-intensity interval training.
So if you were a coach working with a hockey team, would you use more high-intensity intervals in your training plan, even for players who aren't focused on endurance?
It's a good question, and it's one that researchers are really digging into. It's tempting to jump on that bandwagon, but we need more research to make sure that increasing those proteins through training actually translates to better on-ice performance.
We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the possibilities are exciting, to say the least. Imagine tailoring training programs to optimize those cellular mechanisms.
It could be a total game changer. But even without those futuristic interventions, this research has a lot to offer. It emphasizes aerobic fitness, individualized training, and it reminds us that we're still learning so much about the human body.
It's mind-blowing, all these things happening at the cellular level that affect what we see on the ice.
And this research is just a glimpse into a field that's constantly evolving. I think we'll be hearing a lot more about those cellular processes in athletic performance in the coming years.
Can't wait to see what they discover next. It changes how you think about elite athletes. It's not just talent and hard work. It's about understanding and optimizing the incredible machine that is the human body.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to leave you with a thought. Imagine you're coaching a hockey team. You've got this knowledge about muscle proteins and how they impact performance. How would you change your approach to training? Would you focus more on developing aerobic capacity? Even for those explosive forwards, would you use specific drills to target those key proteins? Something to think about. You might just stumble upon the next breakthrough in athlete training.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the science of muscle and hockey. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.